You can tell your story as you'd like to tell it, man. But we want to have some time, of course, to discuss current issues and what you're up to and what your passions are and how we can all get together and pull on the rope. So it's all about you, my friend, because
Good.
you've got the
We're
story.
live.
You ready in the green room?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the green room. We have some special guests this morning, and we have a special event tomorrow. Is Dr. Barry's birthday. So
It is. I put on my oldest pair of scrubs today. Richard, I'm going to be 65 tomorrow, believe it or not. And so we have Elizabeth Buchanan, who is the attorney for new friend, and we met once, fortunately, down in Miami during COVID with masks on and everything. So I can't wait to give you an advocate's hug, Richard Delisi, who we welcome back from your incarceration here in Florida. I don't want to steal the story, but I know many of you in Florida know this already. Last week we had Sean Worsley on with his lovely wife, Ebony, which was the first in our, what we're calling 2-week injustice series, where we're really trying to focus on everybody. And this is the point, Elizabeth, and I want to get into this with you after Richard tells his story. Legalization and or holding your medical card means nothing if you don't have job protections and licensure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt. So as we see a gentleman like you who spent a large part of your life incarcerated over a plant, right? I just think it kicks off the story, and Sean's last week as well, to what we really need to be discussing now is that we know where we're going, but we need to make sure we get there in the appropriate way. So Richard Delisi, welcome to the green room. I can't wait to hear your story.
All
So
right.
I'm just going to open up.
Now?
Yes.
Well, what happened to me was I had been incarcerated once before for marijuana and nonviolent charge, and I wound up getting they gave me, I think, 5 years or something, right? And I wound up getting out and getting my business started and trying to be not an access, something good for my community, where I could just feed back to what was going on. I wound up getting a shop and I started doing body work and I had my business going good. And an old friend of mine came around, right? And he had owed me money for something that he took from me years ago.
What year was this, Richard?
This was 1987.
Wow. Here in Florida?
In Florida, in Pompano Beach, Florida is where. And so what happened was my friend came to me and I said, hey, I need that money you owe me, because I was in kind of a little pinch. I was trying to get the business rolling well, And he told me, oh, yeah, no problem, blah, 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 this and that. And I got you. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I got an airplane that I'm getting ready to sell. I got a deposit on it. Get in touch with your uncle and ask your uncle if you could borrow 25 grand for 2 months, and I'll give him a little interest, and you'll be set with that. So I told him, you sure now? Don't put me out on the line, because my uncle, ain't the type of guy that you push around like that,
Listen, you'll get no Italian jokes out of me, Richard.
Yeah.
We got our Jewish mafia too, and Ruta's
absolutely.
Lithuanian. So we got it. We got it, man.
So where was I?
About how JJ.
The airplane.
Oh, so JJ. So Jim White kept. I call him JJ. Jim White and his wife Shelley, which is a Jewish mafia woman, so she thinks. She was actually a Jewish woman that set people up to get their money, and she was working for the government too, and so was he. But what he did was, he owed me the money, so what he did was he kept coming around saying, come on, let's do a deal. Afterwards, he said, oh, the guy backed out of the airplane. I said, hey, JJ, you told me the guy couldn't back out. I borrowed this money from my uncle. Now I'm going to have problems. Meanwhile, my uncle wound up having a heart attack and dying over the deal.
Oh.
really crazy stuff happened.
Wow.
You know, all stuff that people don't know about that I keep inside because it's no one's business but my family's. So he kept coming back and back and back, and I was getting pressured and pressured by
By JJ.
you know, he kept just coming back, and I kept telling him no, no, no. And people were witnessing me telling him no.
Because he was wanting Richard to do a smuggling trip and bring in 1,500 pounds of cannabis into the country. And he kept telling Richard, I won't even take a cut. I'll give you all the profits. You get everything. Let's just do this. Let's get you right financially. And I'll do this for you, old friend.
But you got to remember something.
Friend.
He also owed me like 450 for something that he did to me years ago. And he knew that he owed it to me. It wasn't like, because he used the money to, to do things with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Wrong place, wrong time, resulted in horrible things for you.
This guy has been working for the government for at least 40 years now.
So yeah, eventually you took the bait and
Right.
you
But I
agreed.
just wanted to fill him in on,
Yeah.
he's been working for the government so long
Ugh.
that what he does is he entraps people,
Yep.
takes a deposit for whatever he's going to do. Like he got a nice lump from me and my friend in New York, and he takes the money, then he sets you up. You know,
Were these federal
what he did.
charges, Richard?
What he
And
did
did you
was-
have representation at the time that you felt was good and adequate? Back then, was it federal, obviously, correct?
It was
Or
a
state?
Florida case.
it was a
Florida
Florida.
Florida case.
The feds didn't want anything to do with it.
Because it was a Florida, the law enforcement here who wanted to make sure Richard and his brother were sentenced to a significant prison sentence. And so because of that, they made sure, that they kept it in state. And also something about JJ was that he was a cocaine smuggler, gun smuggler, and dealer. And that's who the government, the DEA, the IRS,
Say the
the
DEA.
FBI, the FDLE, all of them took him as their informant to get set up plant individuals. So it was, it's kind of crazy that our government was okay with letting this guy smuggle all of that in just to be sure. And before he set up Richard, he had set up at least 75 other people.
Wow, this is a good movie.
Yeah.
Really, did
Yeah,
you
the
see
best
like
part
American
was-
Made and
the
other
best part
movies?
was,
I mean, it
said
exists.
right
Our
in the
government does a lot.
courtroom, when they said to him, well, how does the government pay you? He said, oh, they pay me in $100 bills. And how much money do you usually get for a deal? Well, they give me like 50, 100. They give me this, they give me that. And this guy set up. What's so unbelievable? That no one got him. Because he set up like these cartel guys. Guys, I'm like, I'm an ex-hipster, so I don't have anything to do with violence. I mean, I'm an Italian and I'm from Brooklyn, but I backed away from all violence in New York. They were trying to get me made from when I was a kid, and I wouldn't go nowhere near them people. I had friends that were above them that they were afraid of. So they didn't mess with me when, because I smuggled for years when I was, younger. And they told me, don't worry about anything. You know what I mean? You just do what you got to do. Because they knew I wasn't going in with them. So I guess my friends that they were like a little spectacle about, like they were actually afraid of the mob guys. They went to them and they said, you leave the Delisi brothers alone.
So they finally took you down for that deal with the plane. So is that what took you down?
They did. They set up a phony baloney deal, right? And after he came to me 8 or 10 times, and I told him no, no, no. Then he said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll fly down. I'll land at my house, blah, blah, blah. We'll know. We'll put it in the car. And boop, you go. So he made it sound very good. You know what I mean? Like,
Was there a difference either on the mob side, so to speak, or on the government side? And Elizabeth, you can speak to this too. On the view of cannabis versus the other heroin and cocaine and other more socially destructive drugs, or was it all pretty much just about money and law enforcement? Was it black and white, or was there a lot of gray zone to it?
Oh, no, with him, he was doing whatever he had to do. It didn't matter. He just wanted the money. His wife was very selfish. She was like, she was like the one that played the game with him. You know what I mean? So, they were a team. He was like, he would be like the good guy, and she would be like, semi-bad guy, like the good guy, bad guy cop thing. But she would, go along with everything that he wanted to do.
So you got caught up in a money crunch that just had to do with things that obviously were illegal from the drug side. So you spent 31 years incarcerated in the Florida penal system?
32.
32. I wouldn't want to take one away with, no. Listen, how does that happen? How do you do that? Where did you find your ability?
What I did was I wouldn't sit still in that. When I seen what the whole deal was about, I said, well, I have to get some kind of thing going here where they can see that I'm not one of these other people that are in here. These child molesters, these people that shoot people and hurt people. I mean, I had to, try to get around all of that. So I watched and I seen what was going on, and I said, okay, all I can do is get into something that'll keep my mind occupied, because I thought I was going to get out in a year. So, all these things were going through the courts, and they were denying, and I had them clear as day. It was an entrapment case. There was no doubt about it. But in Florida, entrapment don't work. Now, if I was in New York or I was in Fort Lauderdale and this happened, you see what they did was they arrested me in Pompano Beach in Broward, and they put me in the back of a car and took me to Polk.
Oh, interesting. Polk County?
Yeah.
Wow.
Even back then, what?
Why why are the laws tighter in Broward?
What happened was one day my friend and I flew up there and landed at an airstrip. So that gave them the in for them to come get me, that they charged me up there. But I wasn't, when they got caught, when my friends got caught with the weed leaving the airport, because they phony blown it, they took the weed out of the
Polk County Sheriff's Office.
They took the weed out of the Polk County Sheriff's Office, put it in a truck, drove it to Tampa, Florida. He flew his airplane over there and filled it up with weed and made like he went to Jamaica to his friend's farm.
Wow.
Back to Polk County.
Wow.
And my friends met him there. And where I was still in Pompano. I never went up there.
You never saw or even touched any of that.
Never seen it.
Wow. So Elizabeth, it's interesting. I'm all age related because, as Ruta said, I'm turning 65 tomorrow. So if this was back in the 80s, obviously this all predates, of course, your law career. I'm teasing you, but for you to be able to go back and to see all this now, this is all documented, right, in the record. Yeah. Were you able to utilize this to get Richard out? How the heck did we get him out? And bring us.
And how did he get such a high sentence? Like that's a big sentence.
Back then, Italian Americans were they faced the same prejudice that now young Black males often face.
That's so interesting, isn't that?
Yeah, it's true.
And it was interesting seeing that. And we were able to get a program named ESAS, the sentencing, and they were able to look at and compare Richard's sentence to everybody else's for racketeering and drug offenses in Florida. And they were able to show that Richard's dot on the graph was up here, everybody else was down here. So showing that he was so over-sentenced, showing that, that it's such an injustice, and trying to bring this to the forefront, that this wasn't someone who initiated the crime. This isn't someone who hurt anyone. Why is he getting 90 years? And I talked to his assistant warden. 90
years.
And the assistant warden at Richard's prison had known him for the last 15 years and told me, I had no clue that's what he was in for. He goes, he needs to be out. He said, I see men in here every day who are child molesters, rapists, murderers, and they get half the sentence or even a quarter of it. And this man he's a grandpa. He's an older man. He should be home with his kids, his grandkids. He should not be in this place. And so really highlighting that and bringing it to the media. And this was all during COVID, and Richard was in a private prison. So those prisons don't want the attention that would have came if something would have happened to him because of their, lack of initiative to get him out. Because in Florida, we don't have release mechanisms that are actually used to release people who should no longer be incarcerated.
We don't have parole here.
Yeah, we don't have parole in this state, and so many people don't realize that.
I had no idea. That's the first time.
We don't.
That's
Explain
the first
that
time
to me.
I heard that.
We
Yeah,
don't
I never knew that.
parole in
Don't
this
have
state.
parole.
Really?
We abolished it in the 80s and
Well-
made it, that people did 80% of their sentence. And we do have compassionate release, which is for people who are sick and elderly and really pose no threat to the community. But the problem with that is during COVID, they were releasing 10 people every other month, which in Florida with our elderly population, that's nowhere near enough. And it costs over $60,000 a year, closer to $100,000 when you're dealing with an elderly inmate a year per person. So this practice of just holding people in prisons just to do it is also really costly. And we're not returning, as Floridians, we're not getting a return on our investment with this. So let's start learning how and figure out other ways to invest our money to protect our communities. Because
this needs to be really brought up at the legislature. My God, this is insanity.
I know Senator Brandes has made a big push on his mission in the Florida Senate, but we need to get more of our Florida legislators involved, because most people don't realize that our criminal justice system here is more aligned with Alabama and Mississippi and the worst of the worst in our country. And that's not okay.
That's not okay.
It's
No,
not
for sure. No, I mean, go ahead.
When they're allowing all these other people that are doing violent and playing around with our children and playing around with our community, and they're letting them out again to do it again. I've seen, when I was I spent 32 years. I spent 17 years at one prison. When I was at that prison, I seen people come back 2 or 3 times. I seen child molesters
They all come back.
go out and get caught with baby porn.
No, it's statistically true. They do. They don't reform. They come back. Yeah.
Old child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they come back and they think it's okay.
So how did then, on a personal note, they took away 32 years of your life. So how do you even get that back? How? I mean, this is a disgrace, really.
And your brother as well, right, Richard? Your brother Ted?
Spent 25.
25 years.
Got a couple of years off early. But
you'll never get them back.
Yeah, you can't get
I
it
could
back.
never get that time back.
No.
My children, my grandchildren grew up without me. You see that little girl I'm holding right there? That little girl I had never met till right there.
Wow.
It was a really beautiful moment when Richard walked out of those gates. 60 of his closest friends and family members, some of them childhood friends, had flown down to all be out there, and we were there and watched him walk out. And
people came from all over the world.
Believe me, it was a day that I wish I could have been there for, because I followed the story. The cannabis community, just to pop in on the green room a little bit, of course, the cannabis community has been closely following this, as with the Last Prisoner Project, Elizabeth, and please give a little shout out about that. And, we also have a link, Don, for Richard's GoFundMe. Why don't you pop that up too? Because listen, I want to give a shout out to those people that are doing the work to make sure that no one is left behind. And, we speak to this, and I like to make sure that And I talked to my own evolution as a clinician over the past 4 years of learning things in this, that we need to make sure we take care of the racial and social injustice, our legacy. You know, people that have been in cannabis have been damaged, you know, by governmental and big pharma. And listen, I think, you know, what Richard speaks to is the prison industrial complex, you know, that exists, that continues to exist today. There's no other reason for a Schedule I designation. And Richard, thank you so much for your strong words, because I say you do have purpose as you're out today, as an example of why we need to make sure that we completely decriminalize cannabis. And Elizabeth, I know you're connected politically. Listen, we can't allow them to compromise into Schedule II or III. Okay, it needs to be descheduled and decriminalized. 2 and 3 allows the government to continue to control, discriminate, and arrest.
Nope, they should not have that ability to, especially when right now violent crime, murders, interpersonal violence is going up. So let's stop the war on Americans. That's the drug war. It's the war on us. Let's stop that and put the money and the funds into protecting you and I. That's what we need. So that way we're safer when we go to Publix or go down the road, that we're not worried. That's what we have to invest in. Stop investing in the drug war. And also something that with you being a doctor, Dr. Gordon, something very interesting, and Richard has said, you know, he wants to bring this up about people, what they experience is that, you know, now that he's gotten out, he's going to the doctors, they're saying, you know, you have severe malnutrition. You are having all of these issues and health complications due to malnutrition for so long. So not only did they take away 32 years,
they gave me diabetes.
They said possibly his stroke, mini stroke, was linked to the malnutrition and all of that. That is unacceptable, that we take away years of people's life and then we take away their health too.
They don't even take care of you while you're in there. It's like,
I can only imagine. Yeah.
You ever seen what comes on a tray to eat? You wouldn't feed it to your dog.
No.
I'm telling you. And you know what? Your dog wouldn't eat it. But when you
I shake my head and what you've been through. And listen, just to ask you a question. You don't have to answer it, but I ask it because Bobby Tuna, who I know you know, Robert Platshorn, of course, who had his fantastic fishing event. I know he told me that he had a consistent small amount of cannabis available to him, and he doesn't mind me telling the story. I know he's told it often. He always had a pin joint every weekend, right? And he would look forward to it on the weekends because he knew that he would always have a little bit of a cannabis release, and he would nurse that pin joint all weekend. He would take 2 little puffs of it. Was there cannabis at all in the prison system? Did you have a similar experience to Bobby at all? Or
it's no different than the street. Anything you want, you can get in there.
Huh.
You know what I mean? I was working with a lot of rehabilitation stuff in the prison system, Christian stuff. I tried to, you know, I worked with a lot of gang members, and I worked with a lot of people to try to change their mind about. I didn't, you know, when I was doing my classes, like my chapel classes and stuff like that, I never, like, if a guy was a baby raper or a tree jumper or a murderer, I took him in to try to help him, to better him, if he does get out, to not to repeat whatever he was doing. You know what I mean?
You found a mission, even behind bars, Richard. Yep.
Tell about the reading and writing.
Well, in the beginning, I couldn't read and write.
Wow. I
was illiterate when I went in. I have 2 kinds of dyslexia. And back when I was a kid, you know, my mother sent me to a doctor, and they didn't know what it was, so they thought I was retarded.
That's what they called it, you know, back then.
Retardation. So they put me in a screw house.
A mental facility for what, 2 years?
About a year and a half.
Wow.
And then my father got involved. He said, forget about this. We ain't listening to no priest no more. You know, my mother went to the priest, and the priest told, oh, this kid, there's something wrong with this guy. You know, there's something wrong with your son. You got to put him away. So they put me in this place called Creedmoor on Long Island.
Oh, yeah.
You heard of it?
Yeah.
It's
I have
no
friends
fun.
from Long Island, so yeah, I've heard of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you got to prison, he couldn't read or write, and
what I did was I started a class. What happened was my friend in New York was a was like a super teacher. He was teaching kids that had IQs that were off the off the chart. You know, all of his kids that he taught would go to college, become lawyers, politicians, judges. You know, they would all be successes. That's 98%. That's big.
Yeah.
Well, he finally figured out that there was something wrong up here in me.
Because he was your childhood friend. He sat in the classrooms in the Catholic school and watched Richard when when it was his turn to read, he would act out because he didn't want to be embarrassed.
Wow.
And so finally, the friend who became a reading teacher was like, "Wow, I'm going to send him phonics books."
Yeah, that's what we wound up doing, the phonics thing. But it wasn't hooked on phonics. It was a phonics book that he got from the Board of Education, and he sent it to me, and that's how I learned. So when I learned that, I went to the school people. They had the school in prison, and I went to the principal, and I said, "Hey, listen, man, there's a lot of guys on this compound. They can't read and write.
Sure.
I'm a fortunate one. I learned how to do it because I had a friend. But if you give me a classroom and you give me 20 inmates, I'll guarantee you that I'll teach them how to read and write the way I learned."
Wow.
Because they all had problems with learning. So what I did was I got this class fired up and I started doing it. And you know how cool it is when a guy comes to you and he says, this is like a year after I'm in the class, teaching. Guys come to me and they say, "Oh man, I wrote my mother a letter finally."
Wow.
She cried. She cried when I talked to her on the phone about the letter I wrote. Da, 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 da. I said, "Man, no, that's what it's about." When I pick up a newspaper now, it's like, or a book or a piece of paper, like I read what you wanted to talk about today. I couldn't do that before. It was ridiculous,
Well, glorious that you're out. And
Yeah.
seriously, what we want is for you to enjoy every day out and to the max. And I mean that, Richard. It's such to hear the things that you did in prison to help others,
Yeah.
And
We need more different elements or methods, alternative learning methods for these individuals incarcerated. Because
absolutely.
90% of them are coming out. And Richard had to take the initiative to better himself. Some people are lost. They can't do that on their own. We need a rehabilitative system. Stop just focusing on punishment because it doesn't make us safer. And with cannabis, we need to actually focus on using it as a medicine, making those protections that we had talked about, Dr. Gordon, to be sure that if you're an employee somewhere, that you are able to use cannabis instead of the pharmaceuticals that have killed how many thousands of people that we know.
Let's put it this way. They killed my wife at 50 years, 50, right?
Yeah.
No, 45. 50 or 45. I'm not sure because we were separated at the time.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
And
Elizabeth, we'd love to have you. Maybe we can I would love for the green room, Elizabeth, to have you back and actually talk about prison reform. I think that would be a really good subject for the green room altogether, because it's a huge issue in this state. And now not knowing that there's not even parole and other things and how the cost involved, I think it would be a great show just to do that one time too.
Yeah, definitely.
So my wife passes away from the illegal drugs that she
which were legal from the pharmacy.
From the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Now,
3 months later.
3 months to the day on her birthday, at the same exact time, my son killed himself.
Oh.
With the pharmaceuticals.
23 years old.
And so we look at the Sackler family, Purdue Pharma, and they get to sit in their billionaire mansions, and they've killed how many people that we know and love, and they'll never do a day in prison. They're not facing real accountability, yet Richard never hurt a soul, only brought over a medicine now, and had to give up 32 years of his life and lose his son and family members, and his whole life and family's lives were affected by this because his daughter was 3 years old the day he was sentenced. 3 years old. She needed her dad. And
I mean, you mentioned the Sackler family and El Chapo and all that, I mean, they're equal in my mind, the illegal heroin and others that were brought in were, and quite frankly, I think even worse on the pharma side because they knew and they continued to promote.
there was
there
an
was deceit
intention.
and it was all about money, every bit of it, you know, and we need to unravel it. But listen, clock as it is, I got patience to see, but Richard, I can't wait to see you after COVID and give you, like I said, that big advocate's handshake and hug.
Before the COVID is gone.
Indeed.
I got my shots and all. You got your shots?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're solid.
mine. I had it, it almost killed me inside, right?
Yeah, we're
I
gonna
almost died inside from it.
Yeah, 'cause in the prison, they just give you a couple Advil and say, hope you feel better.
And Elizabeth, thank you so much, and Last Prisoner Project and others
Let
that are out
me
there
just,
doing
let me
the
just
great work.
say this.
Please, Richard.
If it wasn't for freedelisi.com, that because of freedelisi.com, the Last Prisoner Project found out about us. All right. And through the Last Prisoners Project, through the pressure that the media put on them, they told them in Tallahassee, the politicians, get this guy out. He's raising too many eyebrows. And when they did it, they said, and get him out now. They didn't say wait a couple of months. They
Right.
said, we want him out now. He's ruffling the feathers. And these
Listen,
were,
let's ruffle some more. Good trouble. Good trouble is what it's all about.
Definitely.
So welcome back, Richard. Once again, can't wait to see you.
Thank
Listen,
you
I want to
for having us on.
much love.
Yeah, thank you for having
back
us.
to you guys. Listen, I want to give much
Right.
love also to Don, who's our producer.
Yeah, we're gonna bring Don
and I want to
out
bring him out. Don has been with us and has done all of our green
for
rooms
several years.
for
and-
sure.
And
Buddy.
he's moving on to.
Hey, Don, what's up, my brother?
Hello, Don.
Yeah,
It was an
Don,
incredible story and truly heartbreaking, and
Thank you.
honestly, that's amazing.
for sure. So Don, we want to wish him the
Show
best
Don.
as he goes out, doing his own thing, and he's friend forever and he'll be around. But he's done such a great job in the green room for
Yeah,
us.
he's
I
been
want to make sure we call him on out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Guys,
Thank you, and
peace.
happy early birthday.
Incredible.
Hey,
Thank you.
happy birthday, my brother.
Back next week. We actually want to say happy birthday to Dr. Gordon.
Happy birthday!
Oh, hey, wow. Thanks,
So
guys.
we have a cake. Bring it
Oh,
out.
wow, that was cool, man.
Birthday
Oh, we got to show the cake, of course.
Wait,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
happy
good.
birthday to you.
Join us. Wow, guys.
Hey, Dr. Gordon.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. See you next week in the green room.
Next week.
Thanks, guys.